Hello again, folks. How are you doing? Today is the second day of May 2024. It is a Thursday down here in Tampa, Florida. I'm sure it's Thursday pretty much everywhere, unless on the other side of the international date line. I don't fucking know about things like that. I know in Tampa, Florida, it's Thursday, and it's pretty early. It's about 20 minutes till 9 in the morning. I've got a bunch of stuff to do next door, so we're going to do this relatively quickly. We're going to talk about the Antisemitism Awareness Act, House Resolution 6090, which just passed. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of information on that. Specifically, where you can read the act. The actual act itself is very short. And where you can read what it is based on. The working definition of anti-Semitism and the assumptions that are made that are included into the bill, but are assumptions made by the institution. They are not part of the definition. They are the assumptions made of possible anti-Semitic ideas or actions. But they are not part of the definition. There's a lot of problems with H.R. 6090. I believe it was cobbled together quickly to show certain fucking Congress critters, to show their support for all things Israel, especially when elections are coming up. And AIPAC has a lot of fucking influence on who gets money and who doesn't. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But before we do that, I wanted to mention something. There's a guy, an individual on Twitter used to follow me because Uncle Hotep follows me and other people follow me in this Hotep community. And that is cool. I like them. They are conservative. They are alt-right. They are more old school conservative. Doesn't matter. I still like them. I still see some of the things. I mean, old school liberals and anti-establishment, non-rhino fucking conservatives, they see things kind of in similar ways, and very, very similar in some ways are not. However, we can get past that. A long time ago, not too long ago actually, during this fucking election campaign in 2016, Donald Trump himself admitted, he pointed out to his own people, the people who follow and support Bernie Sanders are very similar and see things very similar the way we see things. He was right. This individual, Black Hotep, followed me for a long time because I guess he liked some of the things I said about certainly COVID-19 and where it came from and the mRNA shit and all of these things. However, turns out he has since stopped following me on Twitter because of this, because of that. I saw he posted something about some dude ranting at somebody on in a protest situation. And one guy was slightly bigger than the other guy, and he was ranting at him about, the terrorists that are Hamas. And he was explaining to him the legitimacy of bombing hospitals and schools and fucking post offices and police offices and things, because when Hamas is hiding underneath them in one of their invisible tunnels. And said if the United States did the same thing, then they should bomb the people in the United States or whatever. They would be justified according to the rules of war. And Black Hotep said, preach, brother, to this guy's bullshit, inane bullshit. I needed to explain to you for a few seconds, to folks like Black Hotep, he'll never see this, however, I just wanted to explain to you guys something. And you know it, and yet you don't act on it. And that is the IDF lies. The IDF is not the most moral army in the world. The IDF, they're snipers at one point in time, made up T-shirts that said in Hebrew, 1 shot, 2 kills. And above that, in Hebrew, they had a caricature of a dark-skinned Palestinian woman who was apparently about 8 months pregnant. And superimposed over that was the reticle of a sniper's scope, pointing at her belly. This was not propaganda issued by somebody who was anti-Semitic. This is reality. And if you need a practical example of that, in order to get you to understand what you are supporting, I want you to understand the history. At one time, there was a thing called the Great March of Return. The Great March of Return took place every Friday for about a year between 2018 and 2019. It was on Palestinian land in Gaza. And they marched down a street, thousands and thousands. And it was getting a lot of attention, international attention. People were asking questions. Why can't the Palestinians return to their homes that were taken from them during the Nakba? So, the IDF was tasked with getting them to stop coming out to these protests. So what did they do? They set up those same snipers on a hill overlooking the fence, the border between Palestine and Israel, and they shot people in the legs. This is from the United Nations. How many were killed during the Great March of Return? As a result, 214 Palestinians, including 46 children, were killed. Not in a riot, not by Hamas hiding behind them and shooting it. Nobody ever shot anything at the Israeli snipers on the hill. This took place for about 56 weeks. And every time they shot people in the legs, trying to keep them from going back out next week, more Palestinians showed up. And so they shot more, and then more showed up. And so they shot more, and then more showed up. And so they shot more, and then more showed up. So they shot more. These are the fucking people, Black Hotep, you are in support of. And you are believing when they say evil Hamas is hiding under a fucking hospital. They killed 46 children. 36,000 were injured. 36,000, including 8,800, were injured. And 1 in 5 of each of those injured, over 8,000, were hit by live ammunition. Some were injured by pieces of shrapnel, pieces of bone, flying off of one of their fucking neighbors or their fathers or their mothers or their kids. This is not propaganda. This is not Hasbara. This is not disinformation from Mossad. These are the facts. This took place for 56 weeks. It was despicable. And the only reason they did it, was because they didn't like the PR of Palestinians organizing and marching for the return to their homes that was stolen from them during the Nakba. So they said, well, let's use the IDF to persuade them not to come back out. And all it did was make them come out more. People are not fucking cattle. We're not going to be scared off because you threaten to harm us. And more on that when I get to this fucking HR 6090. Just so you know, this is who you support. You also support the IDF that, back in June of 1967, painted 3 fucking aircraft jets black so they couldn't be recognized. And they launched an attack on the USS Liberty during the 6-Day War. Why? Because they wanted people to think Egypt did it, so we would bomb Egypt and they would be able to steal the Sinai Peninsula. And they lied about it for years. Just like they lied about shooting people in the leg for as long as they possibly could. The IDF lies. Now let me ask you a question. For those of you out there who still fucking follow along with Black Hotep and his school of thought when it comes to, oh my God, Hamas was hiding under a rock, under that hospital. Last week, reports emerged that 392 bodies, including women, children, elderly, and injured persons, people wearing fucking hospital gowns, people who were fucking doctors, have been found in mass graves on the grounds near Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, Gaza's second largest city in the Strip. There were 2. Al-Shifa and Nasser Hospital. 2 mass graves now. Did they have to kill the patients? Did they have to kill children? Did they have to kill women and the elderly and doctors because Hamas was hiding under the fucking building? Many of them had handcuffs, zip ties, were still handcuffed behind their backs when they were buried. Shot in the head, execution style. Israel is still currently lying about that. Preach on, brother. You got to be out of your fucking mind. You have got to be stupid if you believe a thing that comes out of anyone's mouth who was considered a spokesperson for the IDF. You have got to be stupid. Or you've got to be fucking anti-Semitic or anti-fucking... Well, anti-Semitic works. Because let's be honest, most Jews aren't Semites. Most Arabs are. That's the reality. That's the reality we live in. A lot of people want to cling to their hatred. I'm not suggesting that about Black Hotep at all, but I know he followed me, he appreciated my work, now he doesn't. What's the difference? Most people want to cling to their hatred because there's comfort in that, because you understand the world better. Come find out, it doesn't necessarily work that way. The world doesn't work that way. The world is not black and white. It's not that simple. The IDF lies. Hamas has a military wing, just like the United States government has a military wing. It's run out of the Pentagon and places like MacDill Air Force Base, which is 10 miles in that direction, roughly. It's run out of places like that. They also have an educational wing. It's called the Department of Education. They also have a medical wing. It's called Medicare, Medicaid, Department of Health, Human Services. They have a lot of wings, the United States government does. And the United States government right now is run by a group of people who were supposedly elected to office. Yeah. In 2005, the United States and Israel decided they were going to push to have an election in fucking Hamas, in Gaza, because they thought they were going to be able to fix it so that Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, would win. They put a bunch of money into it, They bribed people. Turns out they lost. Everyone told them, don't do it. Hamas will win. They said, no. We got this. They put $27 million into propaganda in fucking Gaza. They flooded Gaza with propaganda. They lost. What did we do then? We tried to get death squads to go into... We didn't try. We did. We got death squads to go into fucking Gaza to kill Hamas. People say, oh, we made Hamas. We didn't make Hamas. We tried to derail Hamas. They had assassinated the biggest fucking Hamas leader months before the election. We did. We weren't trying to fucking put Hamas in power. We were trying to put Fatah in power. Trying to put the Palestinian Authority in power so that they would do the Bantustans in Gaza like they do the Bantustans in the West Bank. So let's dispel with that bullshit fucking propaganda as well. The reason hospitals and schools and post offices and police departments have any affiliation to do with Hamas is because Hamas was elected in 2006, much to our chagrin. Hamas is the goddamn government of fucking Gaza, the elected government of Gaza. That is why there is any kind of affiliation. But they do not put their military wing and hide them under fucking hospitals and schools. We delete the hospitals and schools. We kill the fucking staff. We kill the fucking patients. We kill the fucking... And I say we. Biden administration is just as responsible as Bibi's at this time. Because this could have been done. Biden's administration is just as responsible. So when I say we, I mean we. Because people like Black Hotep will let shit slip because he doesn't want to think about the fact that 14,000 dark-skinned fucking Arabs, Palestinians, have been killed by the most moral army in the world, and we could have stopped it. Like that. That's the reality. That's the reality. You can argue all you want. You can cry. You can whine. You can turn into a Karen if you like. Black Hotep. I don't give a fuck. But that's the reality. Preach, brother. Let's talk about HR 69. I'm going to provide all the links on my website. All you got to do is go to that website. This one right here. No, yep, this one right here. House passes HR 6090, an Antisemitism Awareness Act telling you to shut up when it comes to glorious Israel. This is a former Israeli cabinet member. She won the 2000 Israeli Prize. I don't know what that means. The Israeli Prize. She said all of this on Democracy Now! It's a trick in terms of using anti-Semitic. We always use it. When, from Europe, if someone's criticizing Israel, we bring up the Holocaust. When, in this country, the United States, people criticize Israel, then they're anti-Semitic. And the organization is strong and has a lot of money, and ties between Israel and the American Jewish establishment are very strong, and they're strong in this country, said the former Israeli minister, Shulamit Alani, on Democracy Now!, August 14th, 2002. It is not a fucking question. The use of the anti-Semite fucking smear has been used for a very long time. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is being codified into law in the House of Representatives. How did that go? Let's take a look at the votes by party. All of this is listed. You can find it. Not a hard deal. Votes by party on what, Scott? House Resolution 6090. The Antisemitism Awareness Act, May 1st, 2024. That's definitely the fucking vote. Republicans, yes, 167. No, 21. Democrats, yes, 187. 133. Nays, 70. So by a count of 320 to 91, it passed. Would you like to see who voted and how? All you got to do is take a look at this. Just scroll on down, scroll on down. You can see you're a fucking representative. How did your representative vote? It's all right there. It definitely passed. Now, what's the problem with it? There are lots of problems with it. There are links in this article I did here on my website to a number of things. This is H.R. 6090, Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. And this is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, hereto referred to as IHRA. And this is their working definition of anti-Semitism. Why do I bring that up? I bring that up because that is the basis of this very short act. That's it. That's the whole thing. Okay? From now on, this is going to be called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act of 2023. But this is 2024. It's been around for a little while. They dusted it off. They threw it back out there. Here is the key takeaways from this. You can stop the thing and read it as you want. Here's the key takeaways from this. It is based to provide for the consideration of a definition of anti-Semitism set forth by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance for the enforcement of federal anti-discrimination laws concerning education programs. They mention in this that the definition right here, that's 2023. Here it is. On December 11th, 2029, no, it's executive order. I'm trying to find the actual date where they say it takes it from the date of this particular anti-Semitism. Here it is. Definitions. For the purpose of this act, the term definitions of anti-Semitism means the definition of anti-Semitism adopted on May 26, 2016 by the IHRA, of which the United States is a member, and which definition has been adopted by the Department of State to include the, quote, contemporary examples of anti-Semitism. Now, why is that interesting? They don't provide a link to it. They'll provide links to everything else. They don't provide a link to this shit. Well, I do. Here we go. In the spirit of the Stockholm Declaration that states, with humanity still scarred by antisemitism and xenophobia, the international community shares a solemn responsibility to fight those evils. The Committee on Anti-Semitism and Holocaust Denial called to the IHRA plenary in Budapest 2015 to adopt the following working definition of anti-Semitism. So on May 26, 2016, the plenary in Bucharest decided to. May 25th, 2016. May 25th, 2016. 26, my fault. May 26th. This is the definition. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community, institutions, and religious facilities. Full stop. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the entire thing. That is it. Now, this is the HolocaustRemembrance.com. This is the website of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA. What they do from this is they extrapolate. But they extrapolate in such a way that they are very careful not to overreach. And that, according to fucking Nader, is a problem. If you go to Daily Sabah, you will find down here, New York Democrat Jerry Nadler echoed concerns, telling colleagues on the House floor speech that is critical of Israel alone does not constitute unlawful discrimination. This bill sweeps too broadly. So too does the ACLU say the same thing. It will likely chill free speech with students on college campuses by incorrectly equating criticism of the Israeli government with anti-Semitism. Exactly right. Just so you know, this organization understood that. That's why they don't post links to this in the bill. They don't want you to know this. Let me explain this to you. Contemporary examples of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, and workplace, and the religious sphere could, taking into account the overall context, include, but are not limited to. What does that mean? This is their opinion as to whether, but that's not the plenary definition in Bucharest. That's the plenary definition in Bucharest. This is these people saying, okay, these things could possibly be examples of anti-Semitism. However, you have to take into consideration the context to which these statements or actions were made. They make that very painfully clear, taking into account the overall context. I also want you to call attention to this line right fucking here. Manifestations might include the targeting of the state of Israel conceived as a Jewish collectivity. However, might, doesn't everything, it might, taken into consideration the context to which they were made. However, criticism of Israel similar to that leveled against any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Scott hit it right on the fucking head. If you say what Israel is doing is an apartheid state, in that fucking statement, you are making a connection. You are drawing similarities between what Israel's doing and what South Africa did. And those fucking comparisons, those comps, as the kids say today, are accurate. And many people have made those fucking statements, and many people have come to that conclusion. It is 100% accurate. And by their own definition, you cannot call that anti-Semitic. Why? The answer is very simple. Because Jewish people didn't run South Africa. And you're saying by making the comparison, they're doing the same thing as South Africa, and you condemn South Africa. Ergo, if you condemn South Africa and you're condemning Israel for doing the same thing, you are by definition not being anti-Semitic. Who says that? Who says that? The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. The same motherfucking people who this bill is based on. In the same fucking text adopted on May 26, 2016 by the IHRA. In the same fucking text. Keeping in mind also that even these individuals at the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, there was not the plenary the plenary in Bucharest in May of 2016 did not define anti-Semitism the way they are trying to define it in, the House of Representatives, this is how they defined it. These are potential manifestations that might include anti-Semitism, depending on the context. It's very clear what they're doing. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, possibly anti-Semitic actions or fucking statements, depending on the context. But again, these aren't set forth in the 2016 plenary in Bucharest. These are set forth by these people interpreting the plenary, what the plenary wrote into that, the definition of anti-Semitism. Okay? They're interpreting it. But again, they take into consideration, take into account the overall context. It may or may not include doing these things, depending on the context. Calling for aiding or justifying the killing of harming Jews in the name of a radical ideology or extremist views of religion. Right? There's not a problem there. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, and stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as a collective, such as, especially but not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy, or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, and other societal institutions. Accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoings committed by a single Jewish person or group, or even acts committed by non-Jews. Let me stop for a second there, because that is a key one. You'll see a lot of people running around wearing masks, acting as if they're part of the pro-Palestine movement when they're not, actually. And they'll say things that are anti-Jewish. They'll say things that are anti-Semitic, trying to smear by association all of us who stand up and say, we've had enough. Stop bombing fucking children, which is a very simple, I think, I have a hard time understanding how anybody can say it's okay to bomb kids because Hamas was hiding somewhere nearby. You sleep at night with that, more power to you. But most of the people involved in these actions say that's enough, including many, 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 many Jewish people, and atheists, and Christians, and Muslims, and fucking Hindus, and Sikhs, and people who worship Santeria, and Satanists. I'm sure I left out 150 of them. I'm sorry, I don't know all of them. There's a lot of people. But here's the important thing. The important takeaway from that one was, there are some people who will use this as justification to bolster their hatred. No one here, at least not me or my dog or my cats, there's been no Gabby today. There's no Gabby today. I gotta try to fucking do the cat grift. Nobody here is saying anti-Semitism doesn't exist. No one here is saying that these actions being taken by the IDF aren't fucking increasing feelings of anti-Semitism across the world. I'm sure they are. I, for one, and the people I deal with, do not equate Zionism with Judaism. Zionism is extremely anti-Semitic because Zionism isn't about the Torah. It isn't about Moses. It isn't about Judaism. It is about mammon. It is about the acquisition of wealth and power and land. And that is what Zionism is about. So in that statement, where they say, assigning blame to Jewish people for the acts of things done by a few Jews or non-Jews, Zionists, many Zionists inside Israel and out are not Jews, is anti-Semitic. That is absolutely 100% accurate. There is absolutely no doubt about that. To my knowledge, that's not what's happening on the schools. That's not what's happening in the mass movement in general. People are upset with the actions of the IDF, the actions of the Likud party, the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu, and of course, the actions of the fucking Zionists. None of them that I just mentioned to you, though they profess to be Jewish, none of them are quote-unquote Jewish institutions. Not a single goddamn one of them. So, I agree with that statement, the third statement of theirs, in terms of the possible contemporary definitions of anti-Semitism. I certainly agree with that one. And I think if you put it to the vast majority, 99.99999% of the people who are turning out for these events, I think you will find that they all share my belief in that. Denying the fact, scope, mechanisms, or gas chambers, or intentionality of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of the National Socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II. That's anti-Semitism, according to them. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. That's one of the definitions. I'm not going to comment on all of them. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interest of their own nations, according to them, is anti-Semitism. Nah. We do have laws in this country that prevent anyone from serving the interests of other countries before putting the interest of other countries before the interest of, if they're a congressperson or a governor or a president, before the interest of their own constituency. Whether that's in a state, whether that's in a city, whether that's the entire nation as a president or a Supreme Court justice would. That's not anti-Semitic. And just because they happen to be Jewish and from Israel, it's not anti-Semitic to say, stop serving the interest of some other country other than ours. You live here, you work here, you're elected to our fucking offices. You need to, you put our fucking interest first. Period. That's not anti-Semitic saying that. I don't care if it's someone in Greece, from Greece. I don't care if it's somebody from Iran. I don't care if it's Ilhan Omar or if it's fucking somebody from working for fucking AIPAC. Okay? That's not anti-Semitic just because they happen to be Jewish. It's law. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, e.g. by claiming that the existence of State of Israel is a racist endeavor. That one I have to talk about because I don't. I'm sure there are those who do, and there are Jewish people who do. There are a lot of Orthodox fucking Jews in this country believe that the State of Israel should not exist. I am not one of the people who do that, who feel that way. I believe it was settled, the June 1967 Accord. Say what you will about what happened in 1911, 1914. Say what you will about Nakba. It's all been said, and I understand it's awful. However, in June of 1967, the entire world agreed to the borders of Israel and Palestine. And according to me, and according to 140-something other nations, Palestine exists, Israel exists. Does it matter that Israel is a Jewish state? Well, Turkey's a Muslim state. Saudi Arabia is too. Different branches, I guess, but they are ethno-states. There are a number of ethno-states across the world. Whether I believe in separation of church and state or not, I think it's fine for us. Whether it's fine for everybody else, that's their business. It's not ours. Israel, of course, has a right to exist as a Jewish state. If that's how their people want to do it, then that's fine. That makes no one here, myself, Gabby, or Bo, nobody here is saying they don't have the right to exist. If they did, and they didn't come out against the other ethno-states, then obviously that would be anti-Semitic. What they don't have the right to do is keep expanding by taking other people's fucking land using brute force. Using the any double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. Well, that's interpretation, and you certainly can't make that comparison. You can't make that accusation here, because 95% of the people who are protesting this stuff going on now are either the children of people who were protesting the Iraq War, or our involvement in that and our bombing and killing of the fucking Iraqis to steal their goddamn land, or were actually there themselves. And I'm one of them. So we hold in every country to the same fucking standard. And in fact, when it comes to this, on the left, with these young people, Joe Biden is known as Genocide Joe. Why? Because, as I said before, we bear as much responsibility now as Bibi Netanyahu does, or Joe Biden's fucking administration. So in that regard, we are even holding our own administration to the same fucking account as we are holding as the protesters, and I'll include myself, we are holding Bibi Netanyahu's government and Israel's government. We are holding them to the same fucking standard, even in this case, because we are calling out our own complicity. Number 10, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. We'll get back to that. Holding Jews collectively responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that. Jews are not responsible for the state of Israel. In fact, there are many, many Jews in those fucking crowds that are being attacked at UCLA by fucking Zionist kids today. There are many Jews. You cannot hold Jews responsible for what the state of Israel is doing. And I have made that painfully clear. This is not about Judaism. This is about Zionism. And they are not the same. Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Why is that anti-Semitic? And yet, if we do the same thing with, I don't know, Zelensky's fucking Nazi, not neo-Nazi, pure Nazi goddamn government in Ukraine, why is that not anti-Semitic as well? Why is that not allowed? Is the suggestion that people who are writing Israeli policy, simply by the nature that they are Jewish, they could not possibly deserve any kind of comparison between the policies of theirs and the policies of the Nazi Party in Germany in the 1930s? That's ridiculous. That in itself is anti-Semitic. When you assign a gross generalization like that to all Jewish people, that they are capable or incapable of an action based solely on the fact that they are Jewish, that is, of course, in its own word, it's racist and it's or anti-Semitic. It's not racist, but it's anti-Semitic. So that's hogwash. That's just trying to say, don't compare us to the Nazis. Well, if your policies are similar to, or even borrowed directly from, those of the fucking Nazi Party in fucking Germany in 1930s, then yes, you deserve it. You can argue whether or not that they are. You can try to make your case that they aren't, point for point, and somebody can come along and point for point try to make the case that they are. But what you can't do is hop up and down and screech anti-Semitism, because it's got nothing to do with that. Because the same people are probably making the same cases about Pinochet's government in fucking Chile, about our fucking government here now, and about fucking Ukraine's government. Okay? That doesn't wash. Just because you're Jewish doesn't mean you can't be a Nazi. And if you don't believe me, there were a lot of Jewish collaborators back in the day who very much bought into the Nazi philosophy. Okay. That is this whole thing right here. And I've just shown you all the important parts of this. That is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism. I've read you the definition. I've told you, however, criticism of Israel similar to that leveled against any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. What I wrote was that here are many fucking cases that we protested and opposed brutal U.S. bombings of and ethnic cleansing of Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, Cambodia, Laos. The list goes on. Dresden, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. We weren't around then. Most of us weren't. But we still opposed it. And when we could, we protested these actions. Many of us. So, none of what this whole thing is designed, and here's a point I made about genocide, Joe. This whole thing is designed to silence people. Like she said, it's a trick. We always use it. And this is being integrated into, codified into law, or they're attempting to codify it into law, so that it can be misinterpreted and misused and shut people up. Where has that happened before? Now, I don't want to be accused of anti-Semitism because I am saying Israel's doing something and giving them a hard time when I would give anybody else a pass on it. That was done in Israel. In November of 2023, Israel's fucking Supreme Court banned anti-war protests. After residents of an Arab-majority towns in northern Israel applied for permits to call publicly for a ceasefire. On Wednesday, Israel's Knesset amended the counterterrorism law, including a new criminal offense, the consumption of terrorist materials. If you're found reading something on a website or watching my videos, what can you get? You can get a year in fucking prison. What did I point out on my website? This hastily constructed bill designed to appease Zionists and settler types both inside Israel and abroad. Clearly, they did not expect us to read the source material or the bill, for that matter. They are trying to do to us what Israel did to their own citizens. Silence us under threat of financial penalty and even arrest. You see, Israel doesn't have a Bill of Rights, but we do. Or we do at least until we allow them to tear it up. We have a Bill of Rights. We have First Amendment protections. And to make my point that they didn't want us to actually read their fucking text, I want to read for you the very last part. Section 6, Other Rules of Construction. Section 6, Article B, Constitutional Protections. And what does that say? Nothing in this act shall be construed to diminish or infringe upon any right protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. Of course, that's exactly what it's intended to do, construed to do. but they're going to put that in there because they need to put that in there as cover. This whole thing is very hastily fucking cobbled together. It's just hastily cobbled together. It's bullshit. And their own source material undermines, the statements in their own source material undermines the strength of what they are saying. However, if Israel is any kind of indicator, it might not matter. And this kind of fucking bill can be and will be used to silence dissent in any number of other fucking topics. Like, say, oh, I don't know, the global warming crisis, or the World World Health Organization's pandemic treaty that's coming up. This is very concerning. This is absolutely concerning. The fact that it was poorly cobbled together does not make it less so. That's where I stand with this. And I think to a large degree, that's where the vast majority of the protesters and the demonstrators stand. We're tired of fucking hearing the lies. We're tired of the 40 beheaded babies. We're tired of the systemic fucking rape. We're tired of, yeah, we'll get around to investigating those mass graves, and we'll let Israel investigate it themselves, and they'll tell us the truth about what happened. We're tired of fucking backpacks being brought in after somebody puts gaffer tape over the fucking security cameras so that the PR guy can come in and show the fucking press, oh, look, they had a bag full of AK-47s over here and a bag full of angry dildos over there. Yeah, it was Hamas, 100%. We're not that stupid. At least some of us aren't. 14,000 dead children is more than enough. Put an end to it. Let the chips fall where they may in Israel. The Likud party will be gone. The heads of Mossad, the heads of fucking Shin Bet, the heads of fucking the IDF, the heads of the current administration will all be forced to leave and resign. And in the case of Benjamin Netanyahu, since he's facing felony charges that are only put on hold because he's prime minister, he's wartime prime minister, he will then be arrested. So he's gonna toss his resignation out of the fucking window of the plane as he's taking off and heading to Miami, I'm sure. Okay? These are the kinds of people you support when you support the attacks on protesters. These young kids trying to do their best to help bring an end to the slaughter in Gaza. I'm also going to say one more thing. This is about Naomi Wolf. She is despicable. She is now trying to promote some bullshit story that George Soros and Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation are financing all these movements. And it's all just like Black Lives Matter. Fuck you. Oh, don't believe me? Just look at the New York Post. Really? Look at who owns the New York Post. Look at what kind of Zionist organizations they fucking finance. There are some organizations who are involved in it. There are many Jewish organizations that are also involved in it. And in fact, the first organization, first organized fucking sit-ins took place in Congress. And there were 3-4 different fucking Jewish organizations, American Jewish organizations. And that was 2 weeks after October the 7th, 2023. They were the originals. Were they financed by the Rockefeller Foundation and George Soros? No. These are organizations that are participating, but they've been around for a lot longer than what's happening on October the 7th. What happened on October the 7th. The fact that they get a few dollars from, there are probably 1,000 different organizations that get money from Sunlight Foundation, whatever Soros' bullshit thing is. That doesn't mean they are all fucking nefarious. Many of them are, but that doesn't mean they're all nefarious. Major U.S. corporations were funding the goddamn Black Lives Matter protests. Major U.S. corporations, because they wanted the destabilization campaign to continue. There's not new money flooding into these fucking organizations. In fact, I'm sure some of them are probably losing funding. But the New York Post, that fucking icon of fucking legitimate news, the New York Post that has pushed all kinds of bullshit like Russiagate and go get your fucking vaccines and mRNA vaccines will save the fucking day and ivermectin is bullshit. The New York Post is not a source by which any of us should ever cite in any of our goddamn correspondence. Certainly not somebody with the background degrees that Naomi Wolf does. You have to be pretty fucking simple. I'm sorry to think that. And of course, you can look into the New York Post's history of defending the IDF and Israel's actions. So of course, they would say, oh my God, look, it's the same as Black Lives Matter. Which of course it is not. Okay, so video went longer than I thought. Once again, I said it wasn't going to take long. I lied. This HR 6090 will certainly pass the Senate, and then it'll certainly be fucking signed quickly by Biden. He'll sign it with his hand out. He'll sign it with his hand out, looking for some money. That's just the world we live in. Anyway, I thank you for your time. I thought I would share some information with you, at least my perspective on it. And you can go and look at all the sources yourself, the source material. Go to my website and find that article, and you can find the source material and come to your own conclusions. But it seems pretty fucking obvious to me. Bye-bye.